Going on? Good morning. Everybody doing all right?
Great.
All right. So it's always good to stand in front of you after a win, especially the magnitude of that game. It was like a playoff atmosphere, like a playoff game against a good quality coach that I highly respect, and the way that our team came out there and fought. So defensively. Listen, every game you can look at things you need to improve on. Then you also look at the positives. The two things I think we need to improve on, we got to tackle a lot better than we did. And I understand this is the first game, but there are no excuses for that. Secondly, there were a lot of opportunities that we had to make some big plays. And I'm talking about on the quarterback and on the ball. And we didn't execute those opportunities. So we got to do a better job of that. But when you look at the positives, man, we were really good in the red zone. We could have been better. All right, we had a PI that was called in that situation where we could have been better, right? But they were 2 of 5, which actually hit our mark. We did a really good job as far as forcing them or dictating the game to where it's a passing game. And listen, we know this quarterback's a damn good quarterback, and he made some great plays in that game. But when you throw it 50 times and you average 6 yards per attempt, that's right in our wheelhouse of where we want to be at, all right? So we were happy about that. And, again, just like I said in the run game, we held guys to 3.6 yards per carry, I think on 20-something runs. So that's who we are as a defense. So, again, excited about the movement forward, where we're going. We still have a lot of things we got to clean up, and we will clean those things up. We're looking forward to this next game.
You mentioned the DPIs.
Yeah.
Look at the college game, it seems like they let you be a little bit more physical. It's an adjustment come to the pro game. What are the coaching points with Terry on, since they seemed like they were fairly close calls, I guess?
That's exactly it. You know, you have to adjust to how the NFL call these things. And this is the offensive league, and we know that. And you're absolutely right about how it is in college. And that's one thing that he has to adjust to. And we did a lot of work on that this week in practice. We're going to continue to work on that. And he knows that when he came in. He knows it's going to be different. You know, he understands the magnitude of how the NFL sees offensive football. So we just got to continue to work on those things. But I will not tell him to slow down and take his aggressiveness away from them.
Are you encouraged, like, with the style of those DPS, right? Like I said, they're kind of close calls. Are you encouraged, I guess, that it wasn't something blatant? Is it easy correction for him?
Absolutely. You know, but again, you know, we have to make sure that we coach those things out about where's your hand placement. Understand where do you want to turn your head in certain situations on the ball. So I have no issue with that player getting better at that, because I know he will, because he's a quick learner and he's a fast learner.
You mentioned the big plays. You were, that close to having, a couple more sacks, a couple picks. So
Yeah.
what do you, I don't know, just chalk it up to one of those games? Is there something specific you in practice this week to address?
We just got to finish them. Listen, and Hutch had one. Davenport had one, and they were just missed opportunities, and we put those in that category of big plays. That's another thing that I didn't even talk about, were the big plays. I think we only gave up 5 in this game. So, but yeah, we had 2 interceptions that we should have had also. Those are missed opportunities. But we get a chance to get our hands on the quarterback, we got to wrap them up, we got to bring them down.
Particularly about that challenge this week. Baker Mayfield's a guy that can make some guys miss
Yeah.
when there's pressure. What does he do in particular that's difficult, and what's the teaching point against him?
I think the number one thing is he's playing with a lot of confidence right now. He has a lot of trust in the skilled players that he have around him, and he has some good ones around him. And I think he has a system, and he's been in a number of systems if you go through his career. I think he has a system that he believes in. I know this coordinator was with him in the Rams, so they have a good little marriage about how they want to do things. But he also has brought in some things he had from last year that he really likes. All right, he's going to bring to the game also. So it's going to be a challenge for us as far as preparing for this game, but we'll be ready.
Just looking forward to getting DJ Reader back, and just what does he bring to the mix there up front?
Well, I talked about that last week, that he's a man's man. And when it comes to the run game, he's going to be a huge addition to us. But I don't want guys to just think that that's just who he is, because he has a sneaky athletic ability to help in the passing game too, because he can push the pocket. So anytime you bring a player like that, back in the fold, it only helps us as a defense.
Just to go back to the big plays you just talked about, Sean McVay said recently that limiting explosives, getting explosives has been kind of one of the top 3 keys to victory. I'm just curious how much that informed your, game plan for that game.
Well, that's every week. And he's right when he says that, because usually when you give a big play, you're going to get points. That could be 3 or that could be 7. So And I think every coach across the league preaches those things. So the thing is, we didn't give up many. I think we gave up 5 again, and we gave up 20 points on 80 plays, which is pretty damn good for defense.
When you see your defensive line get the pressure ahead, you
Yeah.
didn't have to blitz as much because the front four was generating it. The talk is Matthew got rid of the ball really quickly.
Yeah.
What is the counter to that to allow your defensive line to get home? What's the risk reward balance for you?
Well, I think our D-line do a really good job in practice of when they're in front of the quarterback, man, sometimes you just got to get your hands up, all right? And that's just as good as sometimes getting pressure on the quarterback because now you get to tip balls and things like that. So that's something we got to continue to work on. And you're right, like Matthew got the ball out really, really fast. And the thing is, we were hitting him, but the thing is, he was getting the ball out in these 5-yard routes and things like that. So we got to do a better job of getting our hands up when we don't get a chance to hit him because we had multiple guys that was around him.
Is there anything you can do coverage-wise to make them hold on, even if it's a quarter or a half
Just play
second?
tighter. Just play tighter.
On that play, on the drive when they took the lead late in the game,
Yeah.
I think Stafford was 8 of 8 on his passes on that drive. I think you guys were on base in most of that drive. Can you identify like why they were so successful, just marching down the field and completing so many?
Well, I would say this: we were in base majority of the game, and the reason why we did that is we want to dictate the game. There are certain runs that they have that's tough. You go across the league and watch how they play against these other teams that are tough to really stop in just true nickel defense. So we actually did what we wanted to do and forced this to be a finesse game for him to pass it because we knew he was going to pass us some yards. I take that from Coach Belichick. Make a team left-handed and force them to do something else, and we did that. And the thing is, he was making some dink and dunk passes, which you were talking about on the 8 and 8 for 8. The things we got to do is when we have these zone coverage, we got to be able to match a whole lot better, and that's something we've worked on. We worked on yesterday in practice.
How does Derek's growth in that Sam linebacker role kind of help with what the defense wants to do with the defensive fronts?
Yeah. Man, he's doing a lot for us. And it actually goes back to the question that was just asked on some of those match coverages. That's one thing that he's improving on is being able to match these guys in the flat, match the guys that run these little curl routes and things like that. But we're asking him to do a lot now. I mean, he's playing on the line of scrimmage. He's playing stack backer. He's also playing on the edge for us as a rusher. So I have to give him a lot of credit on just his mental capacity to be able to pick up everything and be able to execute like he's executing.
Has it been pretty obvious that Carlton Davis spent 6 years with Tampa Bay this week in meetings and walkthroughs and practices?
Listen, I will tell you this. He's normally a quiet guy, but he gave the best introduction of those receivers that I've ever heard a DB talk, ever in my coaching career. And that's saying a lot. And the way he articulated, like how these guys are, how they act, how they operate, was pretty amazing yesterday. I wish I actually taped that just for my own, just so I could show the other players, like, this is how you do it. But he does have he has a little something in him, and he's not going to show that. That's just who he is. But you could tell that it's Bucks week for him.
The Rams did have
Just to follow up on that, if I can real quickly, you know so much about these guys just from watching
Yeah.
the film. Like, what was something that he could tell you or tell the group that you can't see? What did he tell you about?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that.
Coach, is that normal to have someone who has familiar with a team like that to get up and introduce the...
Well, I think it's smart if you have a player that just came from a particular team, and he can get up and just give you an insight on how the guys are. And I think every team does that. That's nothing new.
the Rams, the ability to shut down their run.
Yeah.
Their best successes were on some of those wide receiver sweeps. You guys
Yeah.
also run them. You ran one with Khalif, one with JMO. Do you see a little bit more of that in offenses as you're looking to taper on the league? Is that a new thing that I guess you've got to figure out as a defensive coordinator and how to stop when you're game planning?
Absolutely. I mean, all these offenses right now, they're being more innovative, and they're having different guys to be able to run the ball. I mean, you see San Francisco, I think they were the team that actually did most of that. They actually have the tight end run the ball. Actually, we had Laporta ourselves run the ball. So it's just something that's going across the league right now. And as a defensive coach, man, you have to be on your P's and Q's to understand that and be able to find ways to stop that because, offenses are not going to change in that aspect. So we just got to do a better job on these jet sweeps, these receivers.
DVs, the focus there is obviously just making sure they're shedding those perimeter blocks.
Well, not just that. You also got to have edge setters too. So it's just not on the DBs. So when you're setting the edge, make sure you set the edge and don't let anybody out contain you.
What was your assessment of how Jack performed week
Jack did a pretty good job. Jack was solid. He was solid. Listen, all the guys can improve. The thing is, you probably didn't hear his name as much as you probably wanted to, but I think he had around 5 or 6 tackles. The thing is, we trying to force the ball to Alex a lot, and that's why Alex had all the tackles.
Keeping on him, I think maybe some of us falsely assumed that Jack was gonna be like manning the mic the entire game.
Yeah.
But obviously you mixed in a little bit of Barnes, you mixed in a little bit of Rodrigo. What was kind of the thinking behind that strategy?
Because we have different packages for different players. And all those guys deserve to play. And I think I've said this since I've been here, that when you're a good player, we're going to try to find a way to put you on the field. And all those guys deserve it. So we have different packages for each player. The thing is, Barnes is just in a lot of different positions, so we're going to get them all out there.
A non-football question just to end it on. It's okay. As you've developed a relationship with Terrion, have you talked about music at all with him? I gotta ask. I have to ask.
Music, as in what aspect?
As in his music.
No.
Okay. Just had to ask.
Have you talked to him about it?
I'm gonna.
Okay.
He's really good, coach. You should listen.
Is he?
Yeah.
So what is he? R&B, rap?
It's like giving 2000s Hot Boys vibes.
Who?
Like T.I. Wayne, like, Southern mixtape vibe.
You got your little swag with you. I can see that. All right.
The third time's a charm. Is that what we're saying? Okay.
Kick off question from the opposite perspective.
Yeah.
We've been talking about, the value of kicking it in and taking the touchback or whatever, but as the return team, you talked about average start being 28.8 yards and there just being opportunity there. Like, how deep in the end zone does it have to be before you're, accepting or reluctantly accepting a touchback?
Yeah, so, I kind of alluded to that last week when I said, if it's not good for the coverage, that means it's good for the return. And what is that yard line? I don't know totally. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that. Obviously, there's just not a lot of information. The one thing I can tell you is kicks that were returned from the end zone last week. Now, that's all of them. So 4 deep, 1 deep, and also 9 deep. But those, I think the average drive start was like the 29-yard line or something. So it still didn't push it past the 30, but it got there close. And then obviously, there's the argument for, well, if it's close and you're not really losing anything, but you have a shot to gain something, well, then is it worth it? And I think that is, a conversation that's probably out there and just, what is that line and are we willing to do that and when and why and how? But yeah, so.
Fumble risk also decreased just because they don't have the full run up as well?
Chicago had the 1 fumble on the week there. I don't know. I feel like those plays are kind of one-off plays that you kind of got to skew the numbers and take out of the equation a little bit. But it's definitely a possibility. It's just not very frequent.
Jake hit the one line drive and kind of nailed it. I think it hit like the 19 or 18-yard line. I guess just how do you decide how often you want to do that and what goes into that?
Yeah, well, some of that's on purpose. Some of that's not totally on purpose. I think there's a number. Anytime you're trying to drive the ball down the field, anytime you're driving the ball down the field like that, there's a chance you hit a little bit high on the ball. When you hit a little bit high on the ball, you end up getting that kind of line drive type kick. There was a handful of that in the league. A lot of these guys ended up hitting that by accident. Prater hit one. So there's a handful of that stuff out there. And then it obviously ends up being a good play. Justin Tucker hit one of those a year ago against us when we were playing at Baltimore, and obviously he didn't mean to do that necessarily, but it ends up turning into a decent result. So there's some reward to it, not a ton of risk. Obviously, it's got to go past the 20, though. We were close.
We saw you working on that squib, a bunch in camp. I'm sure you worked on it a bunch when we weren't watching. It seems like it's really difficult to do to kick with that velocity at that trajectory. The zone is so narrow. So, is that the case? Is it very difficult to be effective with that? And I guess how much risk is it when you're considering it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say it's definitely risky. You don't want to give him the ball at the 40. The 30 is already acquiescing quite a bit here, which is funny to me. That's like a whole nother conversation. But not too long ago, the touchback was at 20. A year ago, it was at 25. You know, all of a sudden, the league got that thing out to the 30, and they're talking about the 35. You know, it's like, oh, my gosh. Might as well start the ball midfield, cut the field in half, don't punt, no kickoffs, just play, you know, flag football. But anyway, that's another conversation. Just stir the pot, you know what I mean?
Do you think the league will eliminate kickoffs at some point in our lifetimes?
I don't know. I think it'll be long after I'm done, so I'm not really worried about it. But yeah.
Bates, it wasn't a long kick, but it was a huge kick, right, to tie the game at the end. So just to this point, for however long you've had him, what have you learned about him and the clutch gene that he has? You know, I guess the ability to perform under pressure.
Yeah, I feel like he does have a little bit of that. You know, the pressure goes up and he kind of calms down, and he seems to come up big in big situations there, which is obviously important quality for a field goal kicker for sure. It's really one of the most important ones. But it was a huge kick. I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, it was a game winner. I mean, if he doesn't make the kick, we don't win the game. And we ended up obviously winning the game. It was a big kick in a big moment. The offense did obviously a great job moving the ball down the field. That certainly helps. The closer you are to the goal line, the better your odds of making those kicks. So anyway, that was helpful also. But he's done a great job. I feel great about him. I got a lot of confidence in him. He's gotten better and better. He's going to continue to improve. He needs to continue to improve. He knows that. It's the same thing we talked about a week ago. You know, he's very aware with who he is. He knows he's a developing player. He's getting better and better. I got a lot of confidence in him, though.
Was he trying to make a football play on that touchback, and what's the coaching point for him?
Ennis Rexrod. Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, that was disappointing for us. Fox, he had a great day, and it would have been even better had we pinned him down there deep, you know. Ennis, I thought he did a good job in the game for us for being his first time. Obviously, that play was not very good. In those situations, you just got to keep your poise. I mean, everything happens so fast. He had great intentions. He wants to go make a play, and sometimes your enthusiasm gets in your way. Sometimes you just got to slow down. And for him in that situation, slow down or avoid the ball altogether and let somebody else who's in a better spot finish it. But all things you learn as young players in this league. You know, fortunately for us, it ended up not hurting us in the game or not costing us the game, so to speak. And he's got a chance to learn from it and grow and move on. And really, that to me is what this whole business is all about. This league's about that. I mean, we all have a lot of room for growth or improvement, and myself included. And that's what's fun about the NFL season is you get a chance to start here, and you're hoping that you get a little bit better every week, collectively and individually, and the coaches included. And if you continue to do that, good things will happen to you. And really, the goal is that you're playing your best football down the stretch.
Fox really early in the answer for having a great day. I think it was last training camp. Dan said something about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, he's so good, you don't want to take him for granted. You got to make sure to remind yourself that. Is it kind of similar with Jack? Like, you got to make sure you don't take what you have for granted in his leg?
Yeah, I would say definitely. In my opinion, for sure, because he is a great player, and you kind of get used to just having him out there. But as soon as he's not there, you'll learn real quick, what the difference is. And, he had a major impact in the game, really, the last two times we played them. And the last couple times we played Tampa Bay also. He's had very good games for us. It is collective. The offense moves the ball. He ends up pinning them down inside. The defense holds them back. They end up punting and giving us field position. But our field position overall has been pretty good. And really, truth be told, the last few years has been pretty good overall. And I would say that's a collective stat, not just special teams.
I just kind of want to get your process of taking data for the new kickoff, because it seems like you've been able to pull a couple examples from week one. Have you watched literally every kickoff from week one? And how much, I guess, do you take into consideration preseason as well, considering maybe people were just playing around?
Yeah, I think all data, all the information is good information. It doesn't mean all data is good data, but there's a lot of information out there. I always say, there's an art and a science to the whole thing. That's what I love about the game is there's people who can say, well, here are the numbers, and it's like, well, yeah, those are the numbers, but did you watch what was going on that particular play? And maybe not so much. So some of that's like the preseason, maybe a team was experimenting with something that you're never going to see, the way they drop the front line on kickoff return or whatever, and you kind of got to filter some of that stuff out, and I would say that's the art to it. Data, the more data we get on the play, the more these plays play out, the more information we get as coaches, and it certainly helps us make decisions. The one thing that didn't show itself in the preseason is there was a lot of balls kicked short of the end zone because in the preseason, from a coaching standpoint, the team that controls the play is the kick cover team. And that's the hardest thing about the play right now. They control the play, and the team that's got the incentive right now is really the return team. The touchback goes out to the 30. You have a chance to rip one back. It's a volatile play. We talked about that. Arizona showed that. I mean, for the fact that there was only a handful of returns and one of them was already returned for a touchdown kind of alludes to the fact that it's volatile. So the return team is not in charge of the play, the kick cover team. So if they kick it way out in the back of the end zone, then the return team's kind of got their hand forced, so to speak, to some degree. And what that is, we don't know. But in the preseason, everyone kicked it short because they wanted to work on coverage. And now all of a sudden we're saying, okay, it's starting to flip. Like maybe it's more advantageous to return it. How deep is that? And where's that yard line or cutoff? So we still got to learn quite a bit probably. It's going to take a year until you kind of really know.
Coach Williams brought up Marcus Davenport's impact on field goal block. He said it just really popped off the tape. And so I'm wondering your perspective to have a guy that has that kind of power, that kind of bull rush ability, what kind of value is for you on special teams?
Yeah, he did a great job. And truth be told, like Mac, Wingo, Davenport, all three of those guys on the inside of our field goal block did a great job. I feel like for the last few years, those guys have consistently played hard for us on the inside and put pressure. We've had a block every year that I've been here on field goal. But he certainly was exceptional. I'll just tell you a funny story. So it was during the week, and I was like, hey, man, like the only concern I really have for you on field goal block is, man, and I'm looking up to the guy. I'm like, you're so tall, like how are you going to get down and underneath these guys? Because so much of it's pad level on the play. And he's like, yeah, I got a plan for that. And I was like, all right, and I said it to him again, and then I turned on the film after the game. I was like, oh, my God, yeah, he sure had a plan for that. He had no problem, but I guess that's probably why he's a pretty darn good player.
I guess I'll close out with, can you just explain why Fox maybe is not on the kickoff duties? You didn't try him in maybe tried him in practice, but certainly not in any of the preseason games. Is there a thinking there?
Yeah, I've always felt like, to me, I think I've said this to you guys before, but I've always felt like the kicker should be the guy kicking off. It's really his skill set, it's what he does. It's very similar to a field goal in terms of style of kick. Obviously much different than a punt. But I've also always said that it doesn't really matter. Whatever's the best thing for the football team is what we're going to do. And so in years past, Fox has really just had kind of a bigger leg than those other guys out there. And so he put our team in a better situation with him kicking off. And then right now with Bates, we obviously, he's got a big leg also and can kick the ball and place the ball where we want to. So we feel real good about him doing it also. So I would prefer it to be that way in general, just because it's more aligned with his skill set. But I would never say never. Put the best player out there. All right. Thank you, guys.
Hello. How are we doing? Good. Awesome. Listen, good start last week. We got the win. Not our cleanest performance on offense. We got some things that we need to take a look at. Primarily the 3 and outs. That's probably our number one disappointment coming out of that game. I believe we had 4 of them. And it's less about not being able to move the ball, and it's more about playing complementary football too and putting our defense out there for, I think they almost had 80 plays in that game. So we just need to do a better job. I think Coach has already talked about our third downs weren't very good once we got 4+. And so that's an emphasis going into this week and where we can improve. The good news is this, when it came down to crunch time, our guys stepped up. So the last 2 drives of the game, between the field goal and then the touchdown in overtime. Offensive line stepped up. David Montgomery stepped up. I know Jameson had a big game throughout that game. He kept us alive and afloat even when we were floundering a little bit. So it was really good to see some individual performances. And then as a unit, not our best stuff, but certainly a first step and something that we can grow on. So, and that's really the name of the game right now is getting better each week. And good opportunity here this week against a very good defense in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Love the execution to be perfect at the game, but how realistic is that when you're practicing it? But I think a game is a little bit different. So I guess how unexpected was it that you had some of the hiccups that you did offensively?
Yeah, truthfully, we were. I think we were all disappointed by it. So we've been together long enough that I know we all know it's game one, and we knew it wasn't going to be our best performance of the year, but there were still a number of things that popped up that just weren't us, characteristic of us and how we play, more so than any schematics or anything like that. It was really more how we play ball. And so we'll get those things corrected and hopefully have some better results going forward.
Big story out of the weekend across the league was that passing numbers were a little bit down. I'm curious, a couple weeks ago I heard Sean McVay say that limiting explosives has become one of the keys to victory. Did that kind of play out in the defensive looks that you guys were getting in terms of them simply wanting to limit the big play?
That's really their philosophy, I think, regardless of what year. I think that's been Coach McVay's deal ever since he took over the Rams was play that shell defense, don't give up big plays. They really wanted to win the game on offense, and so I can't say they did anything we weren't expecting. It's just our execution's got to get a little tighter.
You have this ability to go with rare speed or power. You've kind of got the toolbox to do a little bit of everything with your scheme. Obviously, that's the way it's built, but how unusual is it to have that versatility where your identity is almost the ability to do anything?
That's really what we want it to be, is the multiplicity. It starts with our weapons. We've got speed on the perimeter. We've got speed from the backfield, super athletic tight end that can make plays. And so when you combine that with an offensive line that can be dominant, play in and play out, it's a dangerous combination, and we can morph to whatever the defense gives us. So if they want to sell out and stop the run, we feel very confident in throwing the football. If they want to play too high looks and stop our speed down the field, we feel pretty good about being able to run the ball against that. So we'll continue to morph each week with what we're expecting and adjusting in game with what defenses are giving us.
Doing anything in particular to kind of take the same route out of the game, or it was just like rush the movie the first game, or
no?
Can you get them more involved?
No, all the balls that went to J-Mo very easily could have gone to St. Brown. It's just what coverage they called.
What was the trick to finally unlocking the J-Mo cheat code?
Hard work, and time on task. That's the name of the game for I think all these guys is getting practice reps, time in the building, time with Jared, routes on air, routes against the defense. The connection has started to pay off. I mean, we've been talking about it since the springtime. He's looked like a different guy in his approach, and it's good to see the production follow up. Now, the difference between a good player and a great player is the consistency portion of that. So great game one, let's see how game two goes, and so on and so forth.
Do you see that in his mental makeup and the way he's approaching things? Is he maybe not going to get too caught up in that one game success and whatever it was, 120 yards, and staying still on task and not letting it get too big?
Yeah, I think the fortunate thing for him is he was a big time football player in college as well, so he knows how to handle success. He knows how to handle winning, and I'm sure he was fired up. I know he was in the locker room about the type of game that he had and the impact that he had. Really since we got back to work yesterday and started focusing on Tampa, he's shifted and now he's just thinking about the next thing.
Bucks are pretty short-handed on defense, or could be without some guys at the very least. How does that impact your game plan? How does that impact maybe what you think how they will try to attack you on defense?
Yeah, I mean, you're always guessing when it comes to Coach Bowles schematically. He probably more so than anybody in the league plays the largest amount of defense. The greatest amount of volume. I mean, just today being third down day, you look at last year and they play almost every coverage known to man and different variations of it. And so I think in and of itself, the scheme is extremely challenging. And then when they combine the good players that they have with that scheme, I said it last year, the first time we played them in the regular season and in the postseason, like this is a dangerous team. And so we'll see who they have available here on Sunday. But more than anything, we have to handle all the variety of looks that they can present to us, first and second down and third down.
If they have so much, does that force you to add more or to slim down to make sure, hey, we're doing, do these 5 things really well, and then
I can't give that away.
Because Amon-Ra's been so productive for such a long period of time, I'm just curious, what's his mindset like been this week? Because we all know what kind of competitor he really is.
He just wants to win. And I've been around some guys, particularly at that position in the past, that when they have a game that was below what they wanted it to be, they could pout, they could do this, that, but immediately after the game, I don't know if anybody had a bigger smile on his face than him. So that's what comes with wearing that C on his chest, and he's a great example of what we want everybody on offense to be about, unselfish. And he was happy that J-Mo had the game that he had because he knows it's going to open up more opportunities for him down the road.
And I asked Scotty about this yesterday. In the spirit of trying to get your best players on the field, people wonder why not more two-back sets with Gibbs and Montgomery on the field at the same time. And so I'm just wondering what's the flawed logic in that question? I mean, what is the challenge there? Why maybe doesn't it work as easily as just saying it?
Probably the starting point for that one is not many teams do that. Not many teams play with the 2 halfbacks on the field. And so when you go into a game, you don't know exactly what you're going to get. Are you going to get base? Are you going to get nickel? What personnel group are they going to come out with? And when there's those unknowns, it's hard to hone in on how you want it to attack them like that. And so because there's not a whole lot of evidence on tape, that I think that scares most teams. I think last week we had a couple where we had Vaki on the field with another halfback. So that's another version of kind of what you're talking about. But we've thought about it. Each week our packages change. There will be weeks where we have 5 receivers on the field at the same time. There'll be weeks where we feature the jumbo tight end. There'll be weeks where we want to go with our 2 halfbacks, but each week is a little bit different.
There's something also to be said. I mean, they might be really good receiving backs, but being a receiving back is different than being a really good slot receiver.
Yeah, there's no question. The back skill set from the backfield is what they major in the most, obviously. And then what we've tried to work and develop over the spring, over camp, is working different guys in empty routes, so outside the numbers, and then also the slot routes like you're talking about. And we didn't feature that last week, but at some point this season, there's no question that we will put those guys in different spots.
is that like a toe in the water to figure out how teams do?
They went base defense to Vaki, and we used him, as you saw, more like a fullback.
What do you like about him in that role?
His special teams, we loved him for special teams based on his college tape, but he's been able to translate that physicality that he's shown on special teams to that position. So he's not afraid to come downhill on a linebacker. He's not afraid to go. I think it was one of the outside linebackers he went and tried to blow up last week. So guys that are bigger than him, he's going to bring a level of physicality that you really don't see for someone his size.
It's not often that you see a drive like you guys had in overtime where you just grinded it down the field. What's that like being a play caller when your senior guys dominate that and picking up those kind of chops?
I was just wondering where that was to start the game. It was tough sledding there early, but no, I mean we know we have that in us, and it took until that overtime drive to really feel it, and once that happens, I mean everything's up, and it's really a credit to David Montgomery because we talk about it all the time, and it happened in camp too, where the defense was getting the better of us at times, and we just need one player to give us a spark. And that was a great example of David Montgomery giving us that spark, and he really ignited us. I mean, that was a one-man wrecking show right there. It really was. I didn't even count the number of broken tackles he had on that drive just by himself. So good lesson for all of us to learn. Maybe this week it's St. Brown. Maybe this week it's Khalif Raymond. You just never know who it's going to be that gives us that spark to get us going.
I was just curious about the fifth receiver spot. Tom obviously got first crack at it last week. How much of that was what happens in practice, and how much was a reward for him being the guy that's been here the longest? As you sort of sort through what everyone can do and figure out.
Yeah, being here he's a little bit of a blankie for us because we know if something were to happen, he can play X, F, Z. He can play every spot at the receiver spot. So we feel really good about what he can bring to the table, and I think that gave him the nod last week. Yep. Thank you.